So today we're going to discuss, talk about the difference between Samatha and Vipassana meditation. All right. So I know some of you are familiar with Vipassana. Some of you, maybe you have no idea at all regarding that. So anyone would like to, I think more experienced meditators may want to share what's your current understanding of Samatha versus Vipassana meditation, or either one of the two. I know that you all have have already filled up on the Google form that Shania sent out to you. But it's only like 1 or 2 sentences, and Ken has the best response. He just said, "You spelled Vipassana wrongly." So, all right. So let's just two, maybe two of you can share your understanding, even if you have not attended any Vipassanas before. So let's get the ball rolling. We only have 1 hour, so let's go.
Shall I make it less awkward then?
Hi, Som. Welcome back to Singapore.
Thank you. Thank you. Even though I like awkward silences, I'll break it because we only have 1 hour. So my experience is being deprived of the senses for 9 days. So it's a slightly different interpretation of Vipassana. Not only being in silence and having a certain structure of meditation day in, day out, but also being deprived of light and any sensory input, which to me was the most profound experience in meditation that I've had in this lifetime after being born. That's how I at least try to put it into words. Yeah, so that's it for me. And then the benefits of it, if you dare to really enter that silence, that's where all the answers are. So that's why I am super, super interested in whatever it is that silence is. Thank you.
I guess Samatha is more like concentration versus Vipassana is more insight or vision type of meditation. So if I could put in simplicity, that would be the difference between these two types of meditation. Thank you.
Thanks. What was the first word again for Samatha?
Concentration, calm,
okay.
And quietude, basically, and then concentrate.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mimi. Okay, so very good. Thanks for chipping in, one of you. Okay, so the purpose of today's session is to also help everyone to identify what you have been practicing thus far. I think, everyone here has been through Chintamani except for Heng, but Heng has his own, Heng who is called Huawei, on this Zoom call. He has experience in very strict and regimental Theravadan meditation training. So I have never really gone explicitly into the terminologies of Samatha and Vipassana because I do not want anyone who learns or practices under me to get confused or to chase after any kind of meditation experience, insight, or any objects. As you have experienced from all the sessions thus far, is about illuminating yourself, allowing insight to arise on its own. If you have not watched the recent Wednesday's session, please watch it after this session or this weekend. If you do not have time for the whole 2 hours to watch the recording, then at least just watch the first 20 minutes. We went into quite a lot of detail about how to practice, right? So this talk, I'm not going so much into how to practice, but just talking about more of the technical terms of it. So for those who are familiar with the terms that I'm going to talk about, just you can do me a favor by just typing them into the chat as I speak along. All right. So there's two. So traditionally, we know that there's 2 kinds of meditation: Samatha and Vipassana. As Son and Mimi has shared, Samatha, it basically means tranquility meditation. You meditate on a single object, to develop concentration which eventually leads to the stillness of the mind. In the Tibetan tradition, it's called a calm abiding, just getting the mind to settle, to focus and to be cut away from all kinds of distractions. And when you practice deeper and deeper into Samatha meditation, you also begin to withdraw from your senses. Because in actual fact, the mind can only have one sensory object within its field of consciousness at any particular point of time. So right now, you're actually balancing between two senses, which is seeing and hearing non-stop. But none of these are happening simultaneously. They're happening one at a time. And that's also why in meditation, we choose to close our eyes. At least we withdraw from the visual sensory perception. And Vipassana is actually translated directly as insight. All right, insight. So if you look at the suttas, the Buddha actually did not segregate meditation into Samatha meditation and Vipassana meditation. The Buddha liked to use the word just dwelling into jhana, or in Sanskrit, dhyana, right? So I'm going to type since no one's helping me to type. So dhyana, jhana, or dhyana, that's meditative absorption, all right? Because as you practice, for example, a mantra or a visualization or simply on your breath, you delve deeper and deeper into your mind and you get in touch with just that mental object. And as everything fades away, you eventually get into jhana. So in the sutras, when we talk about right samadhi, samadhi is another word for meditation. So right samadhi, it means the jhanas. But the problem is when they begin to learn meditation and they hear about the jhanas, they'll try to strive and chase after the jhanas. Because what's talk about jhanas, there's a lot of intense bliss and all sorts of experiences within it. But the whole point of meditation is not to strive for anything, right? So that's what the practice of Dhamma is about. First, we learn a lot of concepts and ideas. Those are basically intellectual knowledge, just to give us an understanding of what we're doing. But as we practice along, we have to unlearn everything and then go back to the basics again. Because it's through your wisdom and understanding from your cultivation that you can re-identify and what you learned before, you're approaching it from a different perspective that has came from your meditation. All right, following thus far. So so as I mentioned, there's actually no samatha versus vipassana. The Buddha basically taught anapanasati, which is mindfulness of in-breath and out-breath. And there were other meditation objects like loving kindness meditation, recollection of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha to invoke a certain kind of faith and alertness. And the Buddha also taught like asubha, the corpse contemplation, to help the monastics to let go of their lust and desire for the flesh. Thanks, Hasim. Appreciate it. So in Samatha meditation, there's actually, okay, one more thing is that we've heard the word Vipassana a lot. So as I mentioned, it's called insight. You may have heard of people going on a 10-day Vipassana retreat, and they always tell you they cannot have eye contact, they cannot read, all right? So just to point out, there are many, many schools of Vipassana. And the ones that we always hear about, it is Goenka's school. That's probably what Zoe has went to, right? Where they just keep scanning the body for sensations, right? But so a lot of people have the misconception that Vipassana means that you don't have eye contact, and you just keep scanning and scanning for sensations. No, there's just one style of Vipassana. There are different styles of Vipassana as well. Okay. So I'll just go into Samatha. So Samatha meditation, there's actually three kinds of concentration that we can develop, or three kinds of samadhi, right? So there is number one, the parikama samadhi. I'm going to type it down, parikama samadhi. Okay, I forgot a translation and they refer to my notes what the translation meant, because I felt there was no need for me to remember this. So there's anyone know what's parikarma? Okay, so there's parikarma, and then there's upachara samadhi, which means excess concentration, and then there's apana samadhi, which is fixed concentration. Just give me a moment. Are you all familiar with these terms? Have anyone heard of it before? No, I think Heng might have heard of it before. Okay, so apana samadhi. Okay, so for parikarma samadhi, it basically means the preliminary exercises. So for example, if you want to go to the breathing, you just want to focus on breathing, right? So that is parikarma samadhi. It means you're just beginning the preliminary exercises to get into meditation. And it's just that. It's a extremely gross level of concentration or meditation. So I'm using the word concentration because samadhi is often translated as concentration. All right. So, and then as you practice into deeper, let's say you practice Namo for example. We're all very familiar with it, right? Namo generating loving kindness, for example. Loving kindness, as you all have experienced now, it's not just about wishing others well, but it is about bringing a friendly attitude, an attitude of friendliness towards yourself, your feelings, your body, your experience, and to the world that you're connected with. Right? It is an energy. We have already infused metta into our meditation, be it a mantra recitation or just relaxing your attention on the breathing, right? So as you practice in the meditation object, and then you begin to get closer and closer to the meditation object, meaning the natural sense of focus goes into whatever you're practicing. Just like when you breathe, for example, you connect with nature, right? You connect with the natural love of nature. You connect with how the body is breathing for you, the nature of this breath. So this is what is happening when you practice samatha. You go deeper and deeper into the object. And as you go deeper and deeper, sometimes sounds don't bother you, right? Or even if you have some aches in your body, it doesn't really bother you anymore. And then you can appreciate the stillness and the quietness of your mind. More and more peace and clarity gets generated, which in turn allows you to go deeper. And then we have what we call the 5 hindrances. The 5 hindrances of sensual desire, meaning you want to seek an object of desire outside of yourself. You have aversive thoughts or ill will, restlessness, sloth and torpor, doubt, and all these kind of, these are the 5 hindrances. They will begin to be naturally suppressed. Suppressed not in the sense that, you have an uncomfortable feeling and you suppress it. No, it's because you're focusing on the Dharma object or meditation, and then you go deep into it, right? And then you feel more contented with the present moment. So temporarily, these 5 hindrances will begin to disappear. And the Buddha used the word suppress is because they're not fully uprooted. So the Buddha has some kind of standard of perfection when it comes to enlightenment or meditation. So as long as it's not completely uprooted, he will just use the word suppress. But he did not say, please go and jump on your 5 hindrances, go and step on it. No, the Buddha didn't mention that. All right. So when these 5 hindrances are being suppressed, that's when you get closer to becoming one with the meditation object. And that is upachara samadhi, the excess concentration. You're getting into it. But it is just one step below one-pointedness or jhana. So in apana samadhi, which is fixed concentration, it is where you are absorbed into the object of meditation. Okay, so as you start to, so a recap is, you have the preliminary, the parikrama samadhi, where you begin meditating on your meditation object. As you, so usually when we go into the breathing or any mantras, we will also bring about mindfulness, right, into how we're feeling at that moment, what kind of sensations or emotions are there, and we invite them to breathe with us by developing loving kindness and compassion towards it, so that they can be tranquilized, correct? And then we begin to dive deeper into meditation. And as you begin to sharpen your awareness onto the meditation object, the 5 hindrances begin to fade away based on your understanding and your contentment of your practice in the present moment. And that is when you're one step behind Appana Samadhi. Means that you're already knocking on the door of Appana Samadhi. And during this state of Upachara Samadhi, some people tend to fall asleep because it is almost like a dream-like state, a deep sleep, right? You may think that you're falling asleep, and the moment you think that you are falling asleep, it is a distraction. It means the mind has begun to move. Because when you think that you have gone into sleep, it is the 5th hindrance. The 5th hindrance is doubt, right? So I'll just correct the 5 hindrances: sensual desires, aversive thoughts or ill will, sloth and torpor is the 3rd, restlessness is the 4th, and doubt is the 5th. Okay, understand so far? So this is just for you to map where you're at. Don't chase after these states, right? Just map. And then when we take for example, we did a lot of chanting recently, and also a lot of loving kindness practices. When you see, we always bring about a felt sense of kindness and appreciation to the moment. You embrace your feelings, but when we embrace our feelings, what do? No, we don't just say, "Oh, I need to embrace my feeling." We bring some kind of understanding, right? That all feelings are impermanent in themselves. They are subject to past, and clinging onto them can bring about suffering or unhappiness. So that in itself is a kind of insight that we have. Whether the insight came from deep meditation practice or you have learned it somewhere, but it is an applied wisdom that we put in front of us before we practice. Because to practice, in a way, you also need to know why you're meditating, right? You're not meditating to shut the world out. You're meditating to build enlightenment, to build the gradual path towards enlightenment, and so to develop more understanding towards yourself. So as you do that, you're activating Vipassana. So Vipassana is translated as insight, but there's also a development of Vipassana, meaning the development of insight, which is called Vipassana Bhavana. So Bhavana means cultivation. And it's very important to remember this word Bhavana, because you're not trying to attain any supernatural states. You're here to cultivate yourself. And then, so I'll go back to touch on the samadhi aspects, the samatha aspects. When you develop loving kindness or namosigato, for example, you're embracing everything as a whole. Because you are also, in the background, you have the wisdom of the insight or the understanding of oneness, of emptiness, that nothing has a separate existence. You need to accept and embrace everything as a whole, right? And you can cope with it. You can overcome things. There's a sense of trust within yourself. And also being tender and gentle towards yourself. And that's why when you embrace and not resist any kind of emotions, you're able to dive deeper into meditation. And when that happens, loving kindness gets permeated even more into your mind, right? You feel that you can, anything that comes, you can kind of namusigato towards it. That's a lingo that we use. You can develop more feelings of loving kindness towards everything as they happen, right? So that is already getting into the state of upachara samadhi, the excess concentration, where you begin to feel more and more of the expansion, of loving kindness. Then you can identify that there is you, the person who's responding with loving kindness, and there's objects that are receiving your love. The objects could be a human, a situation, or your own feelings and your emotions, or even your backstories, right? So as that develops more and more, because the basis is on loving kindness meditation, then it goes to a state whereby you can't feel that there's a separation. Everything is just metta. In this field of consciousness, it's just love overflowing, right? And that's also when you realize that you don't actually have to actively activate any more effort or energy. Does that make sense? And you just allow it to permeate. But sometimes, because the mind is not used to these states, the mind will just come in and think, oh, I think I need to generate more. I need to generate more. And that becomes a distraction. That is the fourth and the fifth hindrance. The mind starts to get restless and then it's starting to doubt itself. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I need to focus. I need to concentrate. I need to apply. I need to keep applying. So the whole idea is that when you have that feeling of expansion, you can start to let go and just trust and immerse yourself into that process. There's nothing for you to contemplate on. There's no feelings that you need to penetrate to understand. You just have to just let it be, right? Just let it flow on its own, right? So those kind of feelings or sensations, some people see it as a bright light just pouring in. Some will feel the body expanding. Some will just feel the breath just becomes very, very smooth, like a very beautiful breath, very comfortable, very soothing. Some will feel like they're floating, or the air is just all around in their head, just that. And that is what we call nimitta. Nimitta is translated as sign. It is a mental sign that has come into your meditation to tell you that you're doing it right. Okay, so it's not coming from the universe or anything. No, by now we know that you and the universe are one, right? So if it comes from the universe, it's coming from your own mind. It is a sign. Some people see it as colors swirling. Some people feel their body swirling as well. Okay, so that can get into restlessness. So because at this state, when nimittas can either help you or it can work against you if you're not familiar with it. Some people tend to chase after the light. Oh, can I expand this light? They get curious, right? But the whole reason why we get into nimitta is because we have been practicing letting go in that session, just allowing things to be as they are, let it unfold on its own. If there's a light, it's just another phenomena, just like any feelings or sensations or thoughts that come by, and just let it be. And if this nimittas comes on and you feel that they are pleasant enough for you to immerse yourself into it, you can use it. It's not to say that you chase after the light or the nimitta, right? But you use that to help support your practice at that junction. And when that happens, you begin to merge, to become one. The mind and the mental object merges to become one. So if you think about it as metta, when we're generating loving kindness, that expansion, that light, the nimitta that comes, you become one. You don't need to do anything else. You just need to rejoice in that peace, in that bliss, and just be with it. And then you begin to fall into apana samadhi. And that is the jhana, the meditative absorption. So sometimes when as practitioners, when you get into the jhana or apana samadhi, to you, you might not even know that you're in it. You're in it. Sounds get cut off. You just have no idea. It's like maybe you don't exist at all until you emerge from it. And some people, when it's their first time entering such states, they will just think that, oh, have I fallen asleep? Where did I go? I'm lost somewhere in space. But if you track back, there was probably a lot of blissful or peaceful, profound feeling that just emerge. You only identify it after you emerge from the state. That's if you are a relatively new practitioner. And those states are developed through that samadhi. So I won't go into detail on the different states of jhana, the 4 jhanas, but basically when you're in the first jhana, you will be in the state of vitaka, vichara. These are jhanic factors, right? The first jhana. It basically means applied thought and sustained thought. And over here, we do not mean discursive thoughts. Because in Buddhist psychology, a thought is a mental object. Right? So it could be emptiness, it could be Dharma object, it could be the breath, right? You're just applying it there. Or it could be metta, and it's just there. And it's working on a very subtle level. It's like you crank an old car, an engine, right? The old cars, you have to clutch in, you crank it, and then you have to gas it a little, right? Then after that, you let go of everything, and then the engine just moves on its own, right? Without you doing anything. So it's the same, because we started from the preliminary concentration, which is the exercise that we do, the mental exercise, the practice, from parikrama samadhi. You already started cranking it. So when you enter jhana, the applied thought and sustained thought in the first jhana is just playing on a very subtle level. And eventually it will drop on its own without you knowing. Then you get into the second jhana, where rapture and bliss, happiness, will be present. I won't go into the third and fourth. Those are just intellectual knowledge. You can read it up on your own. So this is to help you identify what goes on. Because in the recent sessions, I think some of you have experienced different things. And so, upon emerging from a deep meditation, be it an upachara samadhi or apana samadhi, mindfulness would have been sharpened a lot. Or what Ajahn Brahm calls superpower mindfulness. And you can use that mindfulness to move into contemplation practices. Perhaps, for example, you want to contemplate on emptiness. You want to contemplate on the selfless nature of everything, of all phenomena. You can begin to just contemplate it. You want to use it. That's where you go into the domain of what we call Vipassana Meditation, which can be practiced while you still have your eyes closed, or you could just walk around and just go and reflect. Or you can reflect on the session that you just had. You want to investigate it and to derive the wisdom, and the insight behind it. So this is how traditionally in some schools is being used. They say you develop samatha, and then you go into vipassana. You start to contemplate. You start to think about mainly impermanence, emptiness, and how suffering gets brought about. Anicca, dukkha, anatta. Right? Anatta is selflessness, the lack of a solid, independent self. Or you can just take it as sunyata. If you all look at the chat, look at the 5 hindrances. Those are the 5 mental factors that are very common in everyone, right? And that's why sila, or morality, is very important. Your meditation or spiritual practice does not happen only on the meditation mat. It happens 24/7, or at least when you're awake. If you can't go into sleep practice yet, it is to be mindful, not to be afflicted, by these 5 hindrances. They are there. They are dormant until you uproot them completely in some stages of enlightenment. But it's just to be mindful of them, and we do our best not to act impulsively. And for the 5 hindrances, you can always look up. There's always ways to deal with them. So there's mindfulness in daily life. So as you develop, when I talk about apana samadhi, right? You go upachara samadhi, and then you don't stop doubting. You stop doubting yourself, and you go into apana samadhi. It just becomes that one pointedness, that absorption into it. It also means that you're not actively generating good thoughts or metta, right? Everything is just functioning as it is. That's the merger of samatha and vipassana. It comes together. Because it is through insight that we let go. We don't just let go of things unknowingly, right? Because as you practice samadhi bit by bit, you're also developing your insight at the same time. Because how can you let go of your concentration object? How can you let go of unwholesome thoughts? How can you calm your feelings without any insight? It is impossible, right? It is already being activated. So samatha and vipassana are actually both sides of the same coin. The Chinese translation for samatha and vipassana, it means 止观. 止 means 阻止. 阻止 means stop. 观 means contemplate or to look deeply. So basically, it means to stop and to look deeply. And that's it. It's actually as simple as that. Any questions thus far? Yes? Ken?
Is it a choice?
Sorry? Oh, is it a feeling like
Is
when
it-
you are in a... Rapture is more like a blissful state. All right. Okay, so you're feeling like you're in a flow. Feel like very clear and logical. Okay, actually logical, no. Yeah, there won't be logic. Meditation is not using logic. I'm going into that domain. So in Vipassana, as I mentioned, Vipassana is insight, but we can develop Vipassana Bhavana, the cultivation of insight. But without enough samadhi, it is very hard to develop the insights. That's why we have to stop in order to look deeply. And when you look deeply into something, aren't you that's developing vipassana, aren't you basically doing samatha as well by focusing on an object? Let's say you contemplate a flower. You want to see the non-flower elements of the flower. You want to see the sunshine. You want to see the earth in the flower. You want to see the farmer in the flower. Take for example that you have to stop, right? And you have to actively zoom into it to take a look at it, right? It's impossible to say, I want to look deeply, but I don't want to focus on it. That's why Samatha and Vipassana are both sides of the same coin. But let's say you want to contemplate on the selfless nature of things. You want to contemplate on your emotions. Maybe you have repressed emotions. You have those feelings you want to understand the nature of feelings. You have to embrace them. You have to invite them up. You have to go into them. That is, you need to contemplate on how they're being brought about and how do you cling onto them. Because, for example, someone says something to you that you do not like to hear and it hurts you. It gets into your gut. and then you begin being unhappy with that person, then you naturally just become unhappy, and you can get triggered very naturally from that. That is what we call Sankhara, mental formations. These mental formations, they are learned, and they will just come up when they get triggered. And because they are being conditioned, it also means there is an unconditioning of them, and you can investigate these things. But it's always good to practice meditation for about 10 minutes to calm your mind, and then you actively go into Vipassana to look at these things. So you're coming from self-care again, right? When you approach it. And when you go into the Vipassana, you're going to begin with a bit of discursive thinking. Just thinking, oh, I need to understand these. Why is that feeling? But slowly, because it is a meditation practice, it is not just a reflection. You're not performing self-counseling. You can dive into it. And when you dive into it, you begin to see it clearer and clearer. What is the nature of that sensation that you're feeling? The mental formation, perhaps anger that just came up for you. Maybe it's something that you do not like to hear, and you have resistance towards it. You have fear of having the same kind of feeling or emotion or incident coming up, right? That is identifying, oh, it seems like there is a self here, right? The self is suffering. But then when all these conditions are being removed, then how come you don't suffer? Right? So you can bring this into your contemplation, because you deserve peace, and you want to find a resolution to it, and then you dive into it. So you start from 10, perhaps 5 to 10 minutes, calming your mind. Once your mind is calm, you approach it. The thing about about meditation is that as you approach things, and that object of meditation becomes very clear to you, and you just go deeper and deeper, you begin to see its nature. And it's not through any discursive thinking anymore. It's just a full focus and concentration on it. Like how we identify feelings and emotions that come up in our meditation. And the moment you identify it, they go away after a while, right? And that's where you see that, oh, actually, they don't last very long. It's my clinging that results in the suffering. But if I don't cling onto it, actually, I don't suffer at all. And what are the impulses that is causing me to cling onto things? You see, these things, right? So in this kind of meditation is that you're bouncing between Samatha and Vipassana. You dive into it, you contemplate it, you ask yourself the right questions, and then you just open up again, and you go deeper and deeper. It is where discursive thinking will stop. You won't use so much of the intellect anymore. There's no logic behind it. You just dive into it, and then it will unravel on its own. And that is what we call a true insight, a true Vipassana that begins to come up. So there is always the active part of Vipassana and the passive part. See some of you thinking, as I mentioned, this is going to be very different from our usual sessions, because it's just giving you all the terminologies over there, which I myself find a bit boring sometimes. But it's good to understand, how all these things apply. But if you think like me right now, right? If you just think about the sessions that we've been having, be it in Chintamani or Wednesdays, or even in some of the chanting practices, or even relating it to your practice, are you able to identify the times where it's Samatha, the times when it's Vipassana, or the times when it is basically both? So you can unmute yourself and to describe it, how you're mapping it.
I still right. Can you hear me clearly? So like the Vipassana meditation, right? So like you dwell on the feeling that make you comfortable, and then we just wait. Like, we just feel there will be some thoughts and like intellectual discussion about why is it like that and so on. But sometimes it feels very productive, like I actually get to a solution in the midst of that. And it's also not like something like this. It will be something insightful still, to some extent. Like, oh, why didn't I think of that? Actually, this is like that. That kind of end, it comes to a close for me. That it does give me some interesting thoughts to a way to look at it. But actually, it's all a discussion going on. It doesn't fade out into nothing.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, Ken. Yeah. So, so what I meant is that you actively go and contemplate on something, and it feels productive because you're analyzing it, right? And then you discover something about it, right? So that is still thinking. You're actively practicing vipassana to contemplate on an object, to investigate and to discover. So it will come to a point where you need to stop. You stop either when you can't find an answer, or you found an answer. And you dive into that, back into stillness, back into silence, and just sit into it. Because sometimes when we are unable to contemplate on something or understand something, right? Be it a Dharma idea, right? Everything is just a concept, right? Be a Dharma truth or a situation. When you can't have a breakthrough to understand it, it means concentration is not powerful enough. And that's why we dive. We dive back into just breathing and just sitting, just ignoring everything and just sitting and sitting. That's the domain of Samatha. Or if you have a breakthrough already, then you just immerse into that, the feeling of the breakthrough. The problem is sometimes when people have the breakthrough, they get so overly excited with it, the mind becomes restless. And they think, oh, let me contemplate on something else. Since like I scored 1 point, I need to score another point. You see? And very often people who are like that, after meditation, they will begin to ask, what's next? Yeah. It is good to be motivated, right? But then you have to understand when we meditate, it is to set everything aside. It is to still the mind eventually. It's to silence. We have so much to deal with in our daily life. Meditation offers us the opportunity to dive deep within ourselves, right? To let go of all these sensory objects and perceptions that sometimes can stir suffering and all. Or can sometimes misguide us, into different goals that does not is not in line with spirituality. So you can just strip everything aside, just dive into your own meditation to illuminate yourself, and that's about all. So this is something that we want to keep in mind. In fact, the Buddha has said that there is no wisdom without jhana, and there's no jhana without wisdom. It goes hand in hand. So the purpose of me just telling you all everything about what is being shared in this session is because we hear about Samatha, we hear about Vipassana, or maybe you have not heard about it. One day you're going to hear about it, then maybe you may just get confused. So it is that dry when it comes to understanding Samatha, Vipassana. But if you just think back on your practice, you're already doing both. The most important thing you need to take note of is the nimitta. The upachara samadhi, when the nimitta appears in upachara samadhi. And then how you get into apana samadhi. That's all you need to make sense of. in your meditation, I mean, we don't have a lot, we're not monastics, we don't have a lot of time to sit in silence, to meditate. So we should not think so much about what is Vipassana. We should just continue our practice as it is and just meditate. Have that tranquility, experience that bliss, being secluded from all sensory perception, and just dive into it. And upon emerging from your meditation or apana samadhi, if you have nothing better to do, then go for a mindful walk. Look at the trees, look at the plants. You can go and think about your senses. How is sight coming about? These things will just appear on their own. You actively go into Vipassana in your waking moments. It is in a sense better than listening to music while you're commuting. Right? I mean, if you're listening to podcasts that are Dharma related, then that's great. But sometimes, we can be wasting time. Not actively contemplating on these things in our wakeful moments. Because when you actively contemplate on these things, you're also reminding yourself. And then when some kind of undesirable situation appears or something within you gets stirred, you're mindful enough to catch yourself because you're already contemplating on it. So in the modern world, we should use our waking moments to practice these reflections and contemplations. No? But I don't mean to just force yourself to just keep thinking about it, right? Sometimes you can simply enjoy the walk or commute. You can, right? You can meditate on it. Following so far? So so just samatha in your basic meditation, vipassana if you have time, in a formal sitting. If not, day to day, observe, you look. They basically go hand in hand. Okay, questions?
So, like in the Wednesday sessions, right, when you do the guided meditation, so then when we're listening to your instructions about how to do whatever, that is basically like Samatha meditation, is it?
Ken, your mic is not very clear.
Can you hear me? So, like when we start the Wednesday, your guided session, and then when you're giving instructions and you're following and sort of trying to do what you ask us to do, right? That is like Samatha meditation, is it? Then when we get into the part where at some point we just don't listen to you anymore, we're just doing our own things, right? That is I'm not sure what to call it Vipassana, but that's just not Samatha anymore.
That is just being into samadhi. Being into your own. It is both, when I guide a session, it's both samatha and vipassana because I don't differentiate between the two. Understand? So I'm sharing with you all this because I don't guide you all every day. I only guide you all every Wednesday. So that there are 6 days of the week, and if you do have your daily meditation, you need to at least know what you're doing. Do you need to develop more stillness and concentration power, or do you need to begin contemplating on things? Do you have enough energy to contemplate on your feelings and your emotions? So Ken, it is both on every Wednesday, if I identify it. And if you notice through your Wednesday practice or even Chintamani practice, it is a combination of both, which is what the Buddha taught, Samatha Vipassana coming together as one. I mean, the Buddha didn't teach this. The Buddha didn't even segregate between the two. I think in the 33 steps of Samatha, is 33, right, Hasim? Or is it 30 something? Can you hear me, Hasim?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Is it 33 in the painting of the elephant and the monkey?
I can't remember, sorry.
Okay, I can't remember either. So there's like 30 steps, of shamatha in the Tibetan tradition. All right, and they describe each step. But then they reach, I think, at the 30th over step, right, is where Samatha Vipassana comes together as one. Which is basically what we've been doing every Wednesday. Or even in Chintamani, starting from session, in Chintamani, starting with session 2 or 3. That's really what we've been doing. So the insights that you get, they are, it's not through an active Vipassana meditation, but it's just the insight that comes as a result of your meditation, with the result of you diving into it. Because if you think about it, right, whatever meditation you have experienced, how can it exist? How can it even happen without a gross level of insight or understanding? Remember, on the recent Wednesday, I mentioned that you before you meditate, you want to not set an intention, but just putting a light of awareness in front of you, just knowing that ultimately nothing has to be grasped onto, right? You can withdraw from your senses and come back within yourself. No, you're already activating a kind of wisdom at your forefront to know what you're doing, know how you're practicing. So you peel through the layers as you practice, just like that. In the domain of psychic powers, Vipassana does not give you a single psychic power. I mean, since we are just being technical here, Samatha gives you all kinds of psychic powers. So again, so some people may think, oh, the Buddha said that you only attain psychic powers or supernormal powers, or we call the abhinya, the higher knowledges, upon attaining the fourth jhana, which is the real one-pointedness. There's no bliss inside the state as well, just a pure one-pointedness. And then you can attain the divine eye, the not just the third eye, but this divine eye can see anything you want to see. You can access the different realms. The divine ear, you can hear different realms, you can hear very far away. It's like, imagine like we're sitting here and then we can hear what's happening in Mimi's house. That's a divine ear, right? Huh? Correct. So okay, then how does it tie in with other practices, right? We know there are practices where you can learn how to develop your psychic powers or learn how to astral project. Maybe in just 6 hours, a course can teach you how to astral project. Right? We don't want to deny that such things exist. I acknowledge that such things exist. Some people are even born with it. So why did the Buddha say that it's only when you attain the fourth jhana then you can have this kind of powers? Basically, like as I mentioned earlier, the Buddha has a very high standard. To him, like, oh, you can astral project. Okay, lor. So, it's like, but can you go to this heaven? Can you go to that heaven? Can you go to Indra's palace? Can you go to Indra's palace and smack his elephant without him knowing? No, but I mean, yeah. So when the Buddha said on the fourth jhana you attain supernormal powers, it actually means the entire mastery of the supernatural power, the psychic power. Yeah. So he has a very high standard. Everything the Buddha mentioned is like tied towards perfection. So just in case anyone develops any psychic powers, and just think, am I at the fourth jhana? Then, based on psychic power, then you can just tell me, is DK wearing any underwear now? Right? So, I mean, if someone develops, right, you want to know how far they've developed, whether they have a fourth jhana kind of psychic powers, you can ask them any questions, right? Like, okay, I have my hands in my pocket, how many fingers are there? Right? Things like this, right? So that's a perfection. But then why is it that the traditional in the Eastern, the traditional practices, especially in the Eastern traditions, why do we take such a slow grind towards it, to develop such powers? Basically, number one, these powers can be seen as an obstacle on the path. We're here for spiritual enlightenment, not to learn how to fly. There's planes now. Even in Singapore, you fly now, it's going to be freaking hot, you will melt. So there's no point to learn how to fly. Right? So we have to be very practical. And that's what I appreciate about the Eastern teachings. Develop meditation as an understanding towards yourself and how you can relate to the world. It's just that. It's that simple. And then you gradually unlock certain powers along the way without being distracted. If you think about it, right, just go on any Facebook group. You see a lot of them people are turning into full-time psychic healers these days. Now, if you're a Reiki master, just Reiki, right? And if you're astral projection specialist, you're just teaching astral projection, right? But then you look at practitioners, like real practitioners, or just look at yourself, right? All of you hold full-time jobs, and you're also a full-time practitioner, right? You know, it means that you see a meaning in life. Isn't that it? No, you're doing something productive. You're doing something for the society. Well, whatever you're doing is also driving the economy in the sense that it's providing jobs. Mm-hmm. But if one is not grounded enough to practice the right path of meditation and then just develop psychic powers, then they don't find any meaning in life other than trying to tell people about learning how to astral project, for example. You know, and the whole life is just marketing and selling the business around astral projection, and that's it. Ask them to do something else. No, don't want. You know, then they just get very lost in life, right? And that's because there's no proper, they do not go through proper meditation training, or at least the understanding of practice. So I'm very happy, you know, when I see all of you practice, you know, some of you have this power, that power, you know, but then we're still being normal guys, you know, normal girls going to work and making good of ourselves in society. Right? So the spiritual meaning is having the right practice. And just that. So if some of you are still curious about psychic powers, then I mean, then just go and join those classes lah, you know. You know, I'm not here to teach any psychic powers. Yeah, or you can just practice, you know, just practice and practice and practice. So anyway, in a nutshell, that's Samatha and Vipassana. One more thing. Everything that you read, everything that you hear about, every Dhamma talk that you attend, no, those are good knowledges for you, but it's just a knowledge. You can contemplate, you can logically analyze it. But once you've analyzed it, you have to drop it, okay? Because it's not a real insight or wisdom yet. The wisdom or insight only comes when you go into a very deep samadhi. It will just happen spontaneously. Sometimes it happens when you encounter a difficulty in life, then boom, it appears. Because you've read it. That is how those knowledges can be translated into wisdom, and it is through samadhi. Make sense? Or for example, since all of you are quite advanced practitioners now, you just go and think back, you know, to the very first time you encountered meditation or encountered the teachings, or the very first book that you pick up. You go and read it, you realize that, oh, it is the basic, but you're going to get a new wisdom out of it, right? Because that is your own experience and your wisdom, and then you encounter it. But it's not to say that experience develops wisdom. No, experience is needed for wisdom, but it does not necessarily develop wisdom. There could be people who are like 70 years old practicing their whole life, but maybe they have no wisdom, right? So so don't think that just because you're not 70 years old, you're not wise. No, you all are wise. Just to put it there. So the last thing, I don't want to hold your arm, I'm so sorry. Sutta Maya Panya. I don't know how to spell Sutta. So there's three kinds of wisdom. Wisdom is called Panya, right? P-A-N-N-A, and the N has this stroke on top of it. So there is Sutta Maya Panya. It means wisdom derived from hearing, from listening to a discourse, listening to a talk. Because in the past, in ancient India, they don't write books on Dharma. Only accountants need to write. So even when you're reading, that is the wisdom. That's the first level. The second level is Mano Maya Panya, through reflection and contemplation. Based on your experience, you can contemplate on certain dharmic knowledge that you encounter. You reflect on them. It becomes a guiding arrow in your life. You know how to disengage from things, you know how to let go of things, you know how not to be so attached to things. And then the last one, Bhavana Maya Panya. It means wisdom attained through your cultivation. Mimi, you remember this very well. Her partner's name is Bhavana, so yeah. Okay, so these are the three wisdoms. So the most, I believe the first two, you all have it. You all reflect, you all study, you all read. But don't neglect the third one, which is through your meditation. Means just sitting into silence, into stillness. Okay, I'm sorry, I overran it. Mimi's prepared to go out, so there's nothing else. So, questions? Okay, that's it. So just remember these three wisdoms that you have to keep in mind. So if you do not read, you may have to read as well. It's not to say, oh, I'm just a Bhavana Maya Panya. I don't need anything. I just sit in silence like a rock. It doesn't work that way. If you don't reflect on the teachings, then how are you going to apply them? Can't just come DK Wednesday, I come and see it and I just zone into it. And then Thursday you go out and then you don't reflect and then you just get about your day and then sometimes we get worked up, we we get beat around by the world and then we come back again. No, all these three go hand in hand. So make time for it. Listen to podcasts, listen to Dharma talks if you want to, or at least spend some time contemplating nature. And that's it. One very good thing is to just look at the sky, look at the clouds, and ask yourself, does a cloud ever die? Where's the beginning point of the cloud? Things like this. What is bringing light? Is it the sun, my eyes, or the object in front of me? These are things that, for someone like Ken, who likes to be very logical, you could do that as well. All right. Okay. So I hope it's just enough things for you to note down and to actually inspire you all to go and read. That's the whole kind of one of the hidden agenda, is to make some of you read. And for your formal practice, just continue practicing as you are. Understand? Try to develop more stillness into your practice. Okay, questions? If not, if you have no questions, I don't want to hold you up. You can leave.
Hi. I feel like whatever, I had a few questions, but then something else just comes and says, well, at the end of the day, what DK is saying is develop your practice and then the answers will kind of reveal themselves. So yeah. Another thought that came to me is that for many years, one of my meditation teachers, he would always say, let meditation happen from the side. And it is a phrase that I have never forgotten, but never really understood. Then I used to be like, what do you mean by happen from the side? Then what are we doing now? That was the thought that I had. But I think now I'm starting to understand, because meditation is a multi-dimensional experience. And it really depends on the individual's readiness to contemplate on how deep they can go. So the teacher can only do so much, right? To bring you into, to do the parikama and to do the upachara and the aparna. It's like they ready you, but then how far the student can go really depends on how far they can, they themselves go. So yeah, it's interesting to contemplate on those things. Another thought that comes to me is the fact that in this community, in the Hermitage, I have met a lot of people who very logically think of meditation, or like of what happened, and then they start analyzing, right? So, but I have never thought of my meditations in a logical way. So now it makes me wonder, maybe it will be good to contemplate on certain things with questions. Maybe that's something that I can start doing to advance my own practice, because I'm literally on the other side of the scale. I don't question. I just let it go. I just am in the moment. But from what I understand from this talk, it's kind of like a pendulum. You switch between the states of like the samatha and vipassana. You just go back and forth eternally. And I don't think you really stop at any one point. And that's what strengthens your practice, has the potential to strengthen your practice and make you a better person in your daily life. So that's what I got from this talk and my experiences. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Sean. Yeah, yes, it's Samatha Vipassana is both sides of the same coin. They go together, right? They're hand in hand. And very good. Yes, in a way, logically analyze or reflect on the sessions, because it's the best chance, because I'm still there. If you talk about it and I hear something that I can help you, to give you something else to answer, to respond to your sharing, then it will help you a lot. I think that's why people tend to share with me their experience as well. I know some of you, like Regine, sometimes you all watch the recordings. You can always write me as well, right? Your reflections on your practice, so that can help me to understand where you are at, right? Sounds good, huh? Additional support if you basically just share in detail. Okay, anyone else?
Zoe here. Not sure if you can hear me well. Yep. Okay. I think when I was hearing a lecture, I was just thinking to myself, like, during meditation, I can probably identify myself when I'm developing the samadhi stage. I kind of feel like when we really reach the Vipassana stage, we actually really wouldn't even think that we're in Vipassana stage, right? Because you are already in the zone. So why would you even wonder, oh, am I in Samadhi or Vipassana? Because it just happened as it is. Yeah, so I kind of feel like probably in meditation, we can only be identifying with the stage of developing Samadhi. Because after that, I think we probably won't think much. Yeah.
Thanks, Zoe. Yes, I don't think that's a question, right? That's a sharing, right? Zoe.
Yep, correct.
Yeah, good, very good. Yeah. So yes, big sister Zoe has spoken. She has opened her golden mouth to reveal the truth about the practice. Anyone has any questions for Zoe?
It's not really a question, but I think what Zoe said was it kind of I kind of identified with it, because I think that I don't know why this past few months practicing on my own, and I guess it's a reason why I've not been sharing, is because I've been struggling at the the Samatha stage, so the concentration part. So today's talk was very enlightening about how those two are kind of linked, like you said, two sides of the same coin. Because it always confused me. Like I didn't know what. I always knew what. Like I heard people talking about Vipassana, but didn't really understand like what it really was, other than what people have said about their own experiences, which can be very subjective, I guess. So I guess I have like two questions. I don't know whether it's relevant or not, but you said that the Buddha didn't teach a distinction between them. So how did the two terms come about? And the second question, I guess, would be this based on my own reflection. It's like a couple of years ago, before I even started meditating, I guess properly, which I only started like a year ago. I wanted to do the 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat. And I didn't in the end, but I had friends who went on these retreats, and what they said was basically like, it was like life-changing in that moment. But it was just, the comments seemed to just focus on those 10 days. Then after that, it kind of like, it didn't really translate into like their lives in the long term. So thinking back on my own experience, like if I had went on that retreat a couple of years back, I think I would have gone in with like a totally misguided, with totally misguided intentions. So I was just wondering, like, what is the 10-day? Why is it so popular? And is 10 days like an arbitrary number? Like, is that something is supposed to be achieved in like 10 days, which is just odd to me. Yeah.
Sorry, what was the first question again?
What was like if the Buddha didn't teach? Yeah. So why the distinction?
Got it. So Samatha, Vipassana, this on this kind of practices, meditations. Okay, the Buddha taught for 45 years. It's a long time where he taught. So and Samatha, Vipassana, a lot of other stuff, even the Upachara Samadhi, Parikama Samadhi, Apana Samadhi, these are all commentaries. Those are post-canonical stuff. The Buddha did talk about them, but he did not use those terms, but he described those states. So from my interpretation, all right, I may be wrong. It could be that scholars or meditation masters, they had to find a way to teach students in a more institutionalized way to how to develop it. So it's a compilation of texts and based on their understanding, and then how they can guide the students, into those various practices, which there is a lot of virtue in them, which I really honor. Otherwise, it is what the Malay say gasa buta, like everything is just everywhere. You have to go and find your way, in a whole an entire library, right? Yeah. So that's that. So, and of course, because of that, then certain schools, will stick by what their teachers taught, and just say, oh, this is the only way. And then our school say, oh, no, mine is the only way, this and that. But so it's good for us to understand how these teachings come about, how this segregation comes about, and then when we can go deeper into the suttas and to begin to understand and practice, then we will be able to reconcile, because it's coming from own practice. And for 10 days, this number, I don't know. Okay. But from what I know, our 5-day retreat was pretty good, right? Silk. Zoe. So yeah. So usually seven. Okay, so let me get this right. Usually it requires about 7 to 10 days, because the first few days you're still settling into it. And because it's conducted in silence, so usually about breakthroughs usually come in day 5 to day 6. Based on how the mind is. So then you have the remaining 10 days to really just deepen and solidify your practice. The remaining 3 days to solidify your practice. So it goes into 10. Understand? So for the 10 days Vipassana or the Gwenka one, you can ask Zoe. Zoe, I think she goes every year and then she consistently practice after that. So from my gathering is that there's a lot of people that just go for 10 days, they realize profound change, but they post Gwenka, they don't know what to do. And that's why the practice it can slip off. So consistent practice will be very important. Okay. Yeah, but the 10-day Gwenka is good. It's good. I've never been to one. I never had affinity. Every time I sign up, then something will happen. Or I'll just end up doing another retreat somewhere. Yeah, so I had no affinity. Like always, I can always ask Zoe. And yes, Son just shared that she would like to talk about Tao approach one day. This intellectual and emerging knowledge. Yes, Son. Yes. Always happy. So Son, we will schedule, okay? If not, Shania will chase you to schedule. Wonderful. So yeah, I mean, anyways, for these satsangs, just happy for everyone. I know that all of you have your own wisdom and your own practices, and it's good to share, together. We can always arrange a day that we can share. Questions? Are there Samatha retreats or only Vipassana retreats? Can both. The retreat that we did is a combination of both, which I don't identify, right? You saw in my writing, I just put Samatha - Vipassana, and that's it. There are purely Samatha retreats. There are. In the Burmese tradition, you'll see all of them are Vipassanas, mostly. Because they like to study the Abhidharma, which is on Buddhist phenomenology and Buddhist psychology. That's why they go into Vipassana. In Vipassana, there are 16 level stages of insight. And this was written by Mahasi Sayadaw, and the late Burmese meditation master. So far, his text is widely recognized and accepted by all Buddhist schools on the 16 insights to be developed in meditation. Yeah, it's like, you develop, how things arise and how things pass, this kind of thing. And it's not true study, it's true just sitting and just observing. Just breaking through and realizing it on your own. So wisdom is a spontaneous wisdom that emerges, that expounds itself beyond the intellect. Okay. Questions or any more sharings before anyone has anything else to say? Sup, Sharanya?
Hello. No, I just thought thinking back to when you first encountered Samatha and Vipassana meditation, what were the sources that you looked to? Or was it purely just practice? Or did you have any role models in terms of because now we have such a ease of access to various teachers from different traditions and all that. So are there any, because you mentioned Dharma talks, right? But Dharma talks by who? Because it looks like there are so many, and there's so many kinds that I feel kind of lost and don't know. And sometimes it's like if I attend one of those, they would either use too much terminologies or get completely lost, or it would just the context would be too different. I cannot understand, I cannot relate. So are there any recommended teachers or readings or things that you think would be good for us to explore at this stage?
From my experience, I was born with it, man. I don't need a teacher. No, I'm just kidding. I could easily turn this into a cult and cheat everyone if I want to. Okay, so I thought I was practicing Vipassana. I thought I was getting close to enlightenment by contemplating and observing emptiness for a very long time, 3 years. I could sit, I think I mentioned this before, I could sit in meditation for 3 to 4 hours at one go and just contemplate on emptiness. Yeah, but which was good. It served its purpose. At least the Dalai Lama taught that way, that you contemplate on the illusory nature of things. So I used text, Nagarjuna's text, to contemplate. Like I could stare at a cupboard and just think, where does contact come? Which comes first, which comes before? Like really go into the minuscule. It served its purpose in helping me developing concentration, but not deep enough for me to go into the to like deep jhanas yet, because I was still using my discursive thinking. I refuse to let it go, and I refuse to drop. I would say that from my own experience, okay, in terms of deep dharma, profound practice, I have always appreciated Thich Nhat Hanh, because he doesn't allow people to fall into terminology. Everything that he writes, his books, is like making you practice. So for me, it has always been Thich Nhat Hanh. But I don't listen to his Dharma talks because I can fall asleep. He talks very slowly. Yeah, so that's why I only read his books. Yeah, to be honest. And Ajahn Chah is very good as well. Ajahn Chah is good. In terms of practice, practice kind of books or Dharma talks. So I began to just want to listen to those. But most importantly of all is to pick a teacher that you resonate with. I mean, resonate with this teacher, you might resonate with the other. So like, for example, I like to read His Holiness the Dalai Lama's books. So I did manage to get a lot of things out of it, and also to some other Tibetan masters. But most importantly of all is that when you read, you must understand why you're reading. Are you acquiring knowledge, or because you want to be liberated? So if you want to be liberated, you'll be reading them or listen to those Dharma talks with a different eye and a different ear. Because they can be delivering those talks or write those books for thousands or millions of people. But people are going to get something out. Everyone's going to get something out of it. And some people are going to get bored of it. So you have to be very clear what you want. And then when you approach it, and then you will find it. That's why we always say that the teacher appears when the student is ready. The saying never goes wrong. Okay? So as long as you resonate with that Dharma teacher, then good. That's the most important.
Yeah. I mean, that's not to say that you are not a great living inspiration for us in our daily life. Just, in terms of like...
It's always good. It's always good. I mean, you can't just learn from one teacher, I think I did mention that before. Like I myself learned from a few different teachers. Different teachers is going to expound a different thing. No one is a Buddha, or no one is the historical Buddha. Everyone has a specialty, right? Just like you go to school, right? You need to graduate, you must pass all subjects. You can't just pass one, and one teacher can't teach you everything. Yeah. So, but I'll give you all some recommendations of what books. I mean, if you're interested, there are some books that are very theoretical, which are good as well. It helps you to understand. Like when I study Abhidharma, I study what are the main 5 object or factors, that the mind is made out of. And I could sit there in meditation for like days or weeks, and that's why I skipped the Vipassana, because I was into it already. I sat alone for days and just, these 5 mental factors that are ever present. That's based on the Tibetan Abhidharma. These things are good for your knowledge. If you go deeper, you want to contemplate on the nature of mind. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Otherwise, we'll call it. And thanks, Hasim. I really appreciate you typing all these things. Shania has an idea book club. Shania, you go and organize. Thanks. I really appreciate it. And if you all want more teachings from me, right? A part of me wants to write, but I have no time. So if you all are going to volunteer more, you allow me to have a lot of time to go and do other stuff or to write or do podcasts. They're just saying. Appreciate it. Okay, I think no one has anything else to say. I appreciate it. Ken is already showing off his dog. That means he's bored. Yeah. And I miss, yes, Regine, I was very happy to see you in the sessions. So I think we will ask for some help for this. I don't know when are we going to have the next discussion. It could be me, it could be Son, it could be someone else, we just have the satsangs like this. It could be a weekly thing, it could be a fortnight thing. We try to do it around this time because Regine is 3 hours ahead of us, right?
It's 2 hours now.
Oh, 2 hours now. Oh, okay. Yeah. No, we will try to accommodate everyone. So yeah. So I will just let Sharanya organize whoever wants to give a talk or a topic. All right. So thank you everyone. I really appreciate it.